morning! I'm really excited about this video. I've been wanting to do this for a very long time, and I finally sat down and wrote everything down when it comes to the aging system, gameplay rules and ways of approaching the game when I play SimsVille. So we have a lot of fun stuff planned for this episode. We're going to take a look at aging, how I choose aspirations, how I choose which dorms or Greek houses my Sims get into when it is time to go to college, because all of these dorms and Greek houses give a very different college experience because of the rule set used in each house. We're going to take a quick look at the new skins, because I'm using new skins. Yeah, lots of other stuff, so without further ado, let's just jump in. We have around 10 items on the list for this video, so let's get started. So I use a custom lifespan mod, and my Sims don't age at 6 PM or at midnight, but at 4 AM in the morning. I previously used Marticore's aging at midnight mod, which is awesome, by the way, and technically I'm still using it. I just adjusted it a little. So the reason for that is I often have larger gatherings, either on a residential or a community lot, and I tend to keep a lot of the Sims selectable because that's just the way that I like to play and that I like to organize things and micromanage everything and yeah, kind of control the entire situation during a party from all different points of view and tracking everybody's wants and stuff. So this often meant that I had to adjust their ages after a party like that, because I lost track of time and Sims were still selectable around midnight and were now out of sync with the rest of the neighborhood. And the biggest downside to that was that during a big party or gathering like that, you don't really want to think about aging and stuff. You just want to enjoy the Sims interacting with each other and kind of just enjoy the party, I guess. Yeah, so I decided that I wanted to change that. So I now use Marticore's custom lifespan mod, and if you want to adjust the time of day that Sims age, there is one line in the mod that you need to adjust in SimPE. It is really easy, and Marticore describes how to do it on the Mod the Sims page, where you can download the Aging at Midnight mod. Link is in my description. So it's really easy to do that if you would like to do that for yourself, or if you have a different timing in mind when you want your Sims to age. That's all possible. Then onto my adjusted version of Marticore's lifespan mod. 2 days for babies, 6 days for toddlers, 7 days for children, 9 days for teenagers, and 45 days for adults. Once a young adult graduates, I age them up 5 days with the Sim Blender, because in this system they spend 5 days in the universityhood, 4 of those within the semesters, and 1 day to tie up any unfinished business that they still have in college, and sometimes throw them a graduation party. And then last but not least, for the aging system, I use Smart Age Correct by Lazy Duchess because I started using the new lifespan in an already played neighborhood, and this corrects the ages to the right system. When it comes to actually aging a Sim to the next life stage, I don't always hold a birthday party, but sometimes I still do. Sometimes I age them up alone in their bedroom right before 4 AM, but usually I do that somewhere on the day or the evening before. They always age up when it says they have 1 more day left in the life stage. And the reason that I do age them up when it still says they have 1 day left, even if it's already almost 4 AM, I just kind of kick them out of bed and age them up, is again because of wanting to keep the ages in sync. Otherwise, Sims that grow up to the next life stage during their birthday party and Sims that age up exactly at 4 AM would be 1 year off in counting their ages, and I don't want that. So with this new system that I have been using for the last few months, I feel like I never have to worry about the ages not lining up anymore, and I really like them to be in sync. The next subject is something I've been working on for almost a year now, and I might have gone a little overboard with this one. So it all started out with me wanting to give some of the townies a family. Watching Annie's Pleasant View, I realized how interesting the townies can be. Sadly, for most of the townies in my neighborhood, it was too late to form a family relationship between them, because most of them already played a big role in the neighborhood history and had married into the major families. So it wouldn't only interfere with their existing memories, but also with the possibility of their children finding a non-related partner if I connected more of the Sims to each other, and therefore connecting more of the family trees to each other. And also, in the past, I had deleted some of the townies that I wasn't going to get back even if I could. Now, I don't feel good about it right now, and I kind of regret doing it, but back in the day, I kind of deleted them for silly reasons. And they haven't been around since I played the first generation, so either way, they should have been long gone by now. So here's a small official rest in peace for Christy Stratton, Kennedy Cox, Ricky Cormier, and Abhijit de Pièce. So I realized I couldn't give them full families, but what I could do was give at least some of them parents. So the plan was simple: select Sims with matching face templates, make them playable, give them a relationship to the Sim that I wanted to give a family, age the newly playable Sims to elders, and then turn them into a tombstone. Giving my townies a little bit of a backstory without actually creating history, and simultaneously cleaning up the neighborhood with having less Sims alive that the game had generated before I started using the no regen mods. It all started going downhill, or uphill depending on your point of view I guess, when I created Randy London's parents. They just turned out so cute and lovable that after having seen them I couldn't kill them off anymore, at least not until they live out the rest of their days and get to know Randy and his family. So instead of cleaning up, I now have 2 additional Sims in a rotation that I never planned for, so yay me. We are only one step further away from bringing the 100 households back to only 64, but it doesn't matter because I love these new Sims so much. Look at them, they are just perfect parents to Randy London. Somehow his entire existence makes much more sense to me since I've met them. I guess this kind of proves the entire point of why it is fun to make prequel families though. Even if you have already played in a neighborhood for some time, it's fun to imagine what kind of lives the townies that you see walking around would have lived. Like, where do they live? What kind of vibe are you getting from them? Who are their friends? What was their relationship to their parents? Do they have siblings? And have you ever had townies with the same face templates that have bothered you? Maybe it's just because there was a family connection all along. I really liked looking at the game that way, and it brought on some new creativity. So in Randy London's case, it had bothered me for years that one of the meal delivery guys had the same face template as Randy does. But when I started looking at that from a different perspective, I was like, of course he looks like that, he's Randy's father. But it wasn't until I had binge-watched Big Mouth's Machinima about Pleasant View that I got really set on the idea of creating actual histories for some of the previously non-playable characters in the neighborhood. And if you haven't watched Big Mouth's Machinima yet about Pleasant View, it is so good. Please go and check it out. I binge watched the series. I did that over a few weekends, like instead of watching Netflix. Apart from enjoying watching their series, this for me also put a big spotlight on Ross Bear as a character, you know, the criminal, mainly because of Big Mouth's take on him, and I can't say why exactly, but I was like, this guy is so awesome. This is such an interesting character. He really deserves a history. So that got me thinking about what his history would have looked like, and I decided he probably would have grown up in like a trailer park. So I found one online, and I made Ross playable, I aged him down, and then actually played through his childhood years, giving him a family and a full backstory with memories, traumatic events, everything, before I moved him to an apartment and added him to the rotation as playable. So at first I thought I'll give him parents and move him into like a trailer or something and see what happens, but it kind of got out of hand, and I think I played his life for like an entire week. So he now has this huge history with all this family drama and him developing like a really cool bond with his grandfather, who was also on the criminal path. His parents who were kind of failing in life, and his father dying really young. And so it all ended up being this story that I really enjoyed, creating a history all around Ross Bear. And by the time that we start the episodes, Ross Bear is just Ross Bear, living alone in a trailer, being a criminal together with some of the other criminals in town. But now for me, the character has so much more depth that it is so much more fun to play that character. I could really go on and on about this, but that was not the purpose of this video, so I won't. There's just a few more things about this subject. All of this was just so much fun to do that I decided to do the same for 2 other characters. The first is Goopy Kills Carbo, mainly because there were so many Goopy faces walking around in my town that I decided to give him a father, a distant father, and 2 brothers by different mothers. But the Gills Carbo family history became so complicated that they probably deserved their own video, so I won't go into that now. I also created a full family life since childhood for Oliver Bertino. He was the only towny child that had not grown into a teenager yet, so he had a pretty lonely existence in the towny pool for 3 generations, until I gave him a history in the last few months. He gave me such a warm, happy family vibe that I thought he deserved to have grown up in a big family with lots of siblings. So that's exactly what I gave him. Also, there are a lot of Sims in the towny pool that kind of look like him, so it kind of made sense to me to do it this way. And again, I made him playable. I found an NPC that looked like she could have been his mother. There was a townie that I thought looked like he could have been his father. I gave him 1 brother, 2 sisters. The youngest one, an actual born-in-game biological child of his 2 chosen parents. So yes, instead of cleaning up, I created another sim again. But it was so worth it to complete this perfect little family. Then for a house for them to live in, I chose one of Kaylee's builds that she put up for download. It's a 2-bedroom small starter home, and I'll leave a link to it in the description. There's also a video of how she built it and how she decorated it, of which of course she did a much better job than I did. It looks amazing. So yeah, this house kinda had the perfect vibe, but it only had 2 bedrooms. So after watching Annie's 100 baby challenge, where she raises 10 babies in a small 1-bedroom apartment, one after the other, after the other, after the other, I thought, why not? Challenge accepted. So I threw in a few bunk beds and some desks, and I figured that this family is so close that they have learned to share everything from a very young age. And it all worked out fine. Oliver and his brother and sisters are all adults now, and they turned out very happy and cute. Oliver now actually has memories of growing up in a household that he would have grown up in if I had played him around the same time that I played the 3rd generation. He should be around the same age as Marcia, who now in my game is in her late 30s. So Oliver is now a few years older than that and has a wife, children of his own. So give or take a few years, it all kind of makes sense now, and they both now have a history of having lived in this neighborhood at the same time, even though I played them very far apart in real life years, like years apart. So next on the list is ACR versus romantic standards, or autonomous casual romance. First of all, I've played without these for ages, so Cherry Blossom Springs is really the first neighborhood that I actually used it in when playing. I tested it out a little bit, but I used it in Cherry Blossom Springs. It's perfect for a new neighborhood when you want your Sims to kind of hook up quickly and start building families and stuff, but sometimes it felt like really too much and out there. There are some scenes in there that I really laughed about it, like at the time, but I don't want the lives of my Sims to be like that all the time. I mean, come on, this guy is on a date in his own home, his date's crush rings the doorbell, and then they immediately rush to the couch and, well, you know, they start wooing right in front of him. So I kept it in the episode at the time because I was just so shocked and devastated that I made myself laugh while editing. And as for the guy that this happens to, he would have sat there all through it next to them on the couch if I hadn't sent him to the kitchen to just get away from it all. Can you imagine? And there are lots of other examples if you like stuff like that, and I do admit it's fun to have some drama in the Sims' lives. So for example, I once was in this neighborhood where the guy was obviously very attracted to his wife. She was blonde and had certain traits, and she had a little group of friends who were all also kind of blonde with the same kind of traits. That's why they were all friends. She threw a party and he literally tried to sleep with every single one of her friends. And I had to keep kicking them out of bed, and it was just horrible because in my eyes these guys were like really happy together, and he would never cheat. So that's kind of one of the downsides to ACR. So it's perfect for a neighborhood when you have like all young adults who are all looking to hook up and stuff like that. But if you're playing in a neighborhood with lots of families and traditions and you want them to stay faithful, there are some settings in ACR that you can use to make them stay faithful. And there is a description on the Pleasant Sims website on how to tweak the settings of ACR. So I would recommend checking that out if you want to adjust the ACR settings in your game. And then on the other hand, you have romantic standards, and I've really fallen in love with that watching Annie's series, really. I saw it online and I thought, well, no, this is not really for me and it sounds complicated and stuff like that. But seeing how much more effort it takes for Sims to really fall in love and to develop relationships that are less predictable. After playing for a long time, knowing that your Sims are going to fall in love when they hit 70 is like, I don't know, it takes away a little bit of the immersion, I guess. So I really like the idea of romantic standards, but I did really like ACR too. So after that long ramble, on to the mods that I'm currently using in my SimsVille setup. Eventually, I found a way to sort of have like a watered down version of ACR that can actually be used next to romantic standards. So I'm sort of using both, and it has worked so well for me so far. So first of all, I've disabled booty calls and adjusted the settings for the sofa woohoo through the ACR menu in-game. And then I just followed an instruction, which I will link below in the description, and I took out most of the ACR romantic socials, but I left in the casual woohoo. Whenever a sim initiates that action, it can still be rejected by the romantic standards criteria of the other sim, so it feels very realistic. The latest version of romantic standards makes it possible for sims to develop a crush whenever they fart hard over someone, and for now that is enough drama for my liking, and for the neighborhood like SimsVille, where I would like the majority of my sims to actually stay faithful for the entire duration of their marriage. So next to that, I still love and use ACR for various reasons, including the possibility of the casual woohoo, the option to show a sim's token showing their age and sexual preference, and their chances of having a baby, and also randomizing their gender preference and showing neighborhood stats about gender preference too, because I like to have like a well-balanced mix. The whole jealousy aspect of the game is also a setting in ACR, and it's still something that I've been trying to figure out with using both of these mods specifically, but if you want to do a deep dive into how those mechanics work in the base game, I can really recommend checking out Little Mills' video about it. They've done an awesome job at explaining and showing everything in detail, and it's really informative to watch, and I can guarantee you will at least hear one or two things that you didn't know about the game yet. For the next one, we need to go back in time to the year 2008 when Free Time just came out. I used the game mechanic back then to form friend groups according to hobby, and I think I talked about this in a previous video too. So when the fourth generation was ready to grow up into teenagers, I knew I had more sims than I could manage, and with Free Time offering 10 different hobbies, I thought how cool would it be to have 10 groups of 8 friends, with 8 being the maximum number of sims in the group back then. So that's what I did. I kind of planned which sims were going to be in which friend group, and that was mainly based on which parents were friends, so the children would actually be able to meet. Sims in the same group would share the same hobby, and that is how I distributed the hobbies. So there was nothing random about it, and I pretty much ignored their own predestined hobby until I got the sim blender and I was able to change that. Eventually, I didn't end up with 10 groups of 8 sims, but with 160 sims spread across 20 groups. I really seem to be addicted to creating new sims and new stories, and it just keeps going. And I always tell myself that enough is enough until I get a new idea. But that's really besides the point right now. So back to the friend groups. A few of those last groups have nothing to do with hobbies anymore and were much more random and diverse in their interests and hobbies, which I really enjoyed too, with sims having different hobbies and interests, and there was just something else that connected them to each other. They still formed a group, but just based on different criteria, I guess. When playing the household of one of the teens, I would frequently invite the entire group over, like daily, and let them have an outing at home or on a community lot. Having an outing also raised the energy bar at the end if the outing was successful, so that kind of really worked out to have outings after school. Every group of friends had 1 or 2 favorite spots in town where they would meet, according to their hobby, so that will make it kind of realistic that they would actually hang out in those places. So, for example, music sims would go out dancing, sims with the games hobby would play pool, nature sims would go to the park, etc, etc. And when they were not acquainted with all of the members from the group yet, and not everybody showed up for the outing, which sometimes was kind of annoying, I sent them to the hobby lot, where the chances were pretty high to run into 1 or more of the other 7 sims that were meant to be in their friend group. Or I would just switch to another household of one of the teams that were actually already friends with the missing one and just play from there, have an outing there, or just let them introduce one to the other. Usually it didn't take more than a few in-game days to get them all to a reasonable relationship level so that everybody actually showed up for future outings. Now, I loved playing the game that way, and even to this day, the friendships of the Sims within these groups is something that they still maintain in their adulthood and have maintained all through college. It's still so very cool to watch them roll once to give someone from that old friend group a call to chat, for example. I'm just such a sucker for nostalgia, I guess. Or I let them meet up at the restaurant for a group dinner and I let them all catch up with each other. And yeah, I think it's a really fun way to play the game. So the rules that I am using today in SimsVille are based on this playstyle, but they have changed quite a bit. First of all, we have the Sim Blender now, so we can teleport any Sim into any lot without having to invite them by phone, and without risking them rejecting the invitation or not being able to show up. So with the Sim Blender, we also have the possibility to change the Sim's hobby. For the 5th generation, I want things to kind of develop more randomly and organically and not meddle as much as I used to. Whichever predestined hobby they end up with, I will keep. But I am allowing myself to let them develop like a secondary hobby. Because I know I just won't stick to the first rule if I won't have that escape. Secondly, the group mechanic doesn't work the way it did anymore, but now we have a much easier way to form quick and easy groups for outings, so it's much simpler to organize an outing where everyone will actually show up. You just need to have a Sim Blender ready on every community lot, so be sure to place that one in before you actually visit the lot. Then you summon the Sims in when you are visiting and then select form a group for an outing through the interactions menu using the mod in the description. And they instantly form or join the group, no greetings needed or risk of rejections. To keep track of these new friend groups, I've added a column in my spreadsheet called Friend Group, so I can easily filter and see which Sims belong to which group of friends. Now this doesn't mean that they cannot form any friendships outside of that group, it just means that this is the main group of friends that they interact with the most as a group. And instead of forcing these groups on the Sims, for the 5th generation, I want those groups to develop more organically, like they did for the Margolis family, who were neighbors in an apartment. Or maybe new groups will form based on who they hang out with at school the most. That'll be a little bit of a new way of playing the game. In any case, it will still be very enjoyable to watch crushes and friendship develop while hanging out in these groups. And third, the places where they can actually meet have changed greatly. I might still use the hobby lots every now and then, or send them to an appropriate community lot that matches their interests or personalities. But in the new setup that I've been using in SimsVille, the earliest that they can actually meet is in the daycare center. They then attend elementary school together, and by the time they're old enough to go to high school, chances are that friendships and first crushes have already formed, so playing the high schools will be really cool in the 5th generation too. The last few groups of the 4th generation have all gone to this daycare center, to the elementary school and to the high school together, and I've used those groups to test out how I want their days to look and how I want to approach playing the schools. I will probably make a separate video about the entire school system and gaining skill points in SimsVille, since doing it here would probably make this video way too long. But we will get into how I play the community lots in general later on in this video. First, let's take a look at what happens at the end of high school and how they apply for college and choose what kind of college experience they are going to have. Choosing a college is a big decision in anyone's life, be it sim or human, and the choice that is made here will definitely impact the sim's future life, their starting skills, their badges, and since I use mods where skilling takes much more time, those starting skills actually have a huge impact on their possibilities in life later on. Now, I didn't want a large number of university hoods because I feel like I already made this neighborhood complicated enough for me to handle, and luckily there's a much simpler way to simulate these differences in college experiences. So I started creating different dorms, mostly based on the Sims' hobbies. Now the funny thing is, I did not plan out this entire idea in a spreadsheet like I do with most other rules and systems, but I just love how this all kind of developed by playing and watching the Sims closely, and it turned out to be so much more fun, way less repetitive when playing their college years, and I'm actually much more excited to actually send the Sims to college now. So this all started when I started moving the friend groups of the fourth generation to college. These friend groups were divided by hobby enthusiasm, as I talked about earlier in this video. So, funny detail here is that I never imagined still playing The Sims 2 at this age. Not that I'm that old, I just always figured that somewhere along the line I would lose interest and be too busy with life and other things and other games. But that kind of never really happened. I always come back to The Sims 2, even if there's a few months in between or even a year or more. I always come back to The Sims 2. And ever since starting a channel, I have not let the game out of my sight for more than a few days, really. So I'm still enjoying it so much and finding out new ways to play the game and be inspired by other channels that make great videos about The Sims. So it's really been part of my life for a very, very long time. But like I said, there was a time where I was perfectly fine with the fourth generation just staying teenagers indefinitely. That is actually what I planned for. I never wanted them to grow up. I wanted them to stay teenagers forever, and that would be just it for me. But then I found Pleasant Sims, got re-inspired, picked up the game, built Cherry Blossom Springs, watched Annie's videos, and now we're back in SimsVille. So that's just the short version, I guess. But anyway, so like I said, I never really planned how these dorms would turn out, and you could probably make a version of this completely to your own visions and liking, or that match your playstyle, or even kind of force yourself to try a different playstyle than you are used to, which I have found really refreshing. Simply put, these dorms have been divided into hobby enthusiasm. So there's a science dorm, there's a film and literature dorm, there are 4 Greek houses because I added 2 more to the existing ones. Now the Greek houses are more based on playstyle, and the dorms are more based on hobbies in the end, but that is how it all started. And since these dorms and Greek houses have so much history to them, and every sim that lived there contributed to it in some way or another, I want to keep them organized just as they are and keep developing and decorating them over time with every new sim that is going to attend these halls. So let me walk you through the steps that freshmen go through when they arrive at college, and we'll take a quick look at the different rules that apply in each of these 12 buildings. Sims that first arrive in the universityhood always arrive on this arrival lot, and immediately after they of course gonna need makeovers. So that is what we're going to do here. So once everyone has the outfits that I want them to have at the start of college, it is time to collectively visit the admissions office, which is a small office that is located in the former coffee place. When they arrive at this office, everyone takes out a loan of 10,000 simoleons. This loan stays with them for the entire duration of their college years. It doesn't matter if they received grants or their parents are rich, each sim gets and keeps this loan until their graduation. Because every few days, interest on that loan is deducted from their account, and I consider that a tuition fee. Before I used this system, my sims would actually earn money during their college years and sometimes return home rich. And that just didn't seem realistic, so this is what I came up with as a simple solution. My sims do have to pay a fee for the dorm they get into before moving there, ranging from 5,000 to 8,000 simoleons, depending on where they choose to live. At this office, there are also toilets. They can get some small refreshments to take care of the first few needs, and they get a chance to introduce themselves to a few other students when they are there. So that is how their journey starts. After they are done at the admissions office, it is time to go to their second stop, which is the campus square, where they can meet and mingle with the other students that are already there. The purpose of this visit is really just to see if they see anyone interesting, have any crushes that are worth considering as a potential date, and just generally because it is fun to see all students just interact and hang out with each other. I let them have their coffees and a bit of fun and a bit of food, so their basic needs are met before they move to the last stop of their first day on campus, the Hamilton Wing, formerly known as the Student Union. Now, the purpose of visiting the Hamilton Wing is mainly because I want another chance of them rolling interesting ones that I can lock in on their first day. Also, another chance for them to meet other students, because I feel like the Hamilton Wing is where the seniors would hang out. I don't think it's really the case, but it's just my headcanon. But also because, just like on the campus square, time has slowed down to 40% here. That is why they needed the coffee. And this way they get a little bit of time to jumpstart their studying before all of the restrictions and rules start to apply. If they have a want for a specific major, they may choose it now, otherwise they choose it later on, or I choose it for them after their freshman year based on their lifetime wish or role in the community. In college time, a semester is at least 48 hours or more, but I work with a system where each semester represents 1 year in the main neighborhood. So when they return, they will have only been away for 5 years, including the extra day that is used for tying up loose ends story-wise or holding a graduation party and sorts. So when they are here in the Hamilton Wing, it is time to make the decision at what dorm or Greek house they want to live, which I will then put into my spreadsheet. The reason why we do this at the end of the tour is one of the freshmen first needs to meet the senior student that is in charge of collecting the fee. We then use the computer to transfer all fees from everyone in the household of the new arrivals to this sim. I forgot to put new computers in the Hamilton Wing, so I had to go back to the admissions office for that this time. But in the future, that will be sorted, and they can just pay the fees in the Hamilton Wing. So the decision about which house they will live in is determined by a number of things. First, the Greek houses have a list of demands including A or A+ grades, plus their fee is higher because it gives better opportunities gameplay-wise to actually graduate and earn skills. For example, I can actually make them do their assignments in here, even if they don't have any wants for it. Second, their lifetime wish about a future career. Certain majors are only offered at certain houses, so they might choose a dorm based on the available majors at that dorm. Greek houses generally have 4 majors that they offer, and the other dorms only have 2. Third is their hobby. If they are not high achievers or very ambitious, or don't have a clear vision of what career they might aspire in the future, they choose a dorm according to hobby. So this means that every dorm kind of creates its own college experience. So in one dorm, I might not be allowed to let them do their assignments or force them to write term papers. And I can only let them go to class when they are not doing anything else. I can force them to go to class if they don't want to go. One exception to that rule is I can kick them out of bed when they're still sleeping. But in any other case, there might be a dorm when I cannot kick them out of bed when they're sleeping, and if they sleep in, they sleep in, and they just miss class. They will probably fail college, but this also means that I'm leaving it up to faith much more and randomness, because previously all of my Sims like graduated with the highest grades possible, and that's just not realistic. So, and I don't want to choose who gets to fail and who doesn't. Like, I could roll a dice, but it just sounds less fun to me. So yeah, I kind of created this system to let it all happen. The only thing that I get to choose and guide is which dorm they get into. If they don't pass any of these demands and they don't have the money, or there's another reason where they end up not checking any box for any of the other dorms, there's a general dorm. And in that dorm, I don't get to control them at all. They just go in there, I give them a makeover, and they have to fend for themselves. So if they graduate from the general dorm, that's really the Sims accomplishment, and I had nothing to do with that. And it's I haven't had that happen yet, but it sounds like fun if it does. It is possible, and it's very unlikely that a knowledge Sim would get into the general dorm, because usually they already had higher grades and more possibilities in previous years and growing up and stuff like that. So it's really unlikely that a knowledge Sim would end up in the general dorm, but hey, you never know. And the last thing I'll say about these dorms is that each of them also has a set of requirements during the semester. So in the mechanical dorm, Sims need to fix an old car each semester, and making robots is always allowed without a wand for it. Skilling, however, is not. They need to have a wand in order for me to make them study a skill. In the agricultural dorm, Sims need to tend to the crops that are planted, which takes up a lot of their time, and skilling is only allowed if they have one for it. In the film and literature dorm, writing random articles is mandatory, and joining a group research that someone else has started in their library downstairs is always allowed. In the rock dorm, playing instruments is mandatory, and every night there's a party and a performance. Joining a group research that someone else has already started is always allowed, if, they can stay awake after all that partying. And in the fashion dorm also, skilling is only allowed if they have one for it. Studying at least a bronze badge in cosmetology is mandatory, and working out is always allowed. So in the worst case, they will have to drop out, but at least they will have some badges for them to find another sort of career when they return to the main neighborhood. So going back to the group of newbies that just arrived at Sim State University, when it turns midnight or when they are close to passing out before that, I send them back to the arrival lot and start moving them out, one by one. They then are sent back to the unibin, from where I move them into the dorms of their choice, and their university adventure can truly start when they spread their wings in one of these 12 different buildings that will shape and form them as young adults. Okay, so since that was a rather big subject, let's follow it up with a small one. So let's talk about skins. In Cherry Blossom Springs, I used the Lilith Honey Honey skin blend, but I wanted something different for SimsVille, and I know I wanted to take this neighborhood slightly to the more realistic side, so I searched for a skin and eyes to match. I landed on the Lilith Eve skin blend, and I still use the Lilith Honey Honey defaults for supernaturals because they are so light, so subtle, and I just find them beautiful. For eyes, I then used Io's defaults. So now that I had finally found the skins and eyes that I wanted to use, I could finally do some makeovers that I've been wanting to do for ages. So these are some downtownies that have been in the game since Nightlife and Apartment Life came out. I've always loved their characters, and they have been friends with my playable Sims, or even fiancés to playables, since I can remember, but I've never really played their stories or made them playable because I wanted to give them makeovers first. So this is what they look like now, after their makeovers. They look much more like how I've seen them in my mind, always ignoring their cartoony image on screen. And I'm glad I won't have to only use my imagination anymore. Personally, I think they look so much better now. and they look so much more like the personality they actually have. I do have to admit I am sort of blind to details like this. Like for example, I never really noticed how dead the default Max's eyes look, but now that I've seen what a simple change of default eyes can do, I could never go back. Lastly, I've also built them an apartment lot. All of the apartments have several bedrooms, so they are perfect for roommates living together. And in my mind, every time we've seen them on community lots, this is where they have always gone home to at the end of the night. So there are still 4 major items on the list for this video, being how I choose aspirations, how I approach community lots and who runs them, rotational gameplay and how I use time, and a bit about the finances of the town, because it wouldn't be a stories and strategy video if I didn't do that. So let's start with the rotational gameplay and how I use time. When it comes to setting up your neighborhood rules, these two are so closely connected that I decided to combine them into one chapter. First of all, I use the community time project, so every time a sim, for example, leaves the house around 1 p.m, stays on a community lot for 4 hours, they arrive home at 5 p.m, but the rest of the household that didn't join them on a community lot does get to play those 4 hours at home. I really like the realism of this, so I intend to keep this in all of my neighborhoods. Then I use Marola's time control clock on every single lot that I build or use. Residential lots are set to 80% and community lots are set to 50%. So they are both slowed down, but community lots a bit more than the residential ones. I copied this straight from Annie's videos. I tried different settings, but I completely agree with her that this feels the most balanced and realistic. They do drop their needs a lot faster when you slow down time, and any other percentage would either give me too little time in the day to do what I want, or have them run for coffee and naps for the majority of the day. Just because I do that doesn't mean I want the Sims to do that. Now, the first time I heard about the time control clock, I thought that it was like insane. Like, why would you want to slow down time? And then I watched Annie's videos, I tried it out for myself, and now I'm more like, why did I never why wasn't this in the base game? Like, this makes so much more sense, and it's so much more balanced if you ask me. So yeah, I really love this mod. It's a small thing, but it's a really big impact. I play all of the households rotationally, and to get to this point I had to make sure that all of the Sims were on a realistic age, which meant I had some catching up to do, and I'm really close now to catching up. The Sims that you saw in the university part of this video were some of the last groups of friends that are supposed to be adults when the first episodes start. So 1 day rotations make a lot of sense on one hand, but they feel too short for me to do a real deep dive into their lives. I tried more than 3 day rotations, but I get bored and distracted too much. So I guess I'm a bit fussy on this issue, or it might be just my ADD tendencies, who knows. In any case, I landed on a system where I alternate between 2 and 3 day rotations. Combine this with a 5-day season, you get a perfect set of 4 seasons and 8 rounds within a 20-year generation. And route numbers is something that I really like. This was 100% inspired by Belladova, who uses a similar system in her Opening Valley series, and who has been, without her knowing, my #1 source for a structured approach to the game. I find her videos really inspiring, and I often find myself thinking about systems to implement in the game after having watched her videos. So please do check her out if you haven't already. And if you're interested, you could also check out her video about CC organizing, because that one really helped me out a lot and was pretty much the reason, or the last push I needed to do a CC overhaul last year. And I'm really glad that I did it. So I've written down the setup for the rotations. I make one winter a bit shorter and one spring a bit longer, because I do like how the snow looks, but I don't like playing in winter. And if we ever get as far as the 9th round, which is only one Saturday, there will be a festival, if I haven't reached the Elder Life stage myself by then. And the last point on the matter of rotations, I don't mind sharing SimsVille with you. Quite the opposite, I absolutely love it. But being an extreme introvert, I always use The Sims to completely zone out and sort of reset my brain. It pretty much enables me to handle throwing myself out in the world again the next day. And I will always need that non-verbal downtime probably, because this is also where my creativity sparks. Without downtime, no spark, no excitement to build new things or take on new projects, be it in the game or in real life. So since there are 100 households, the majority of them will be used for my downtime. You will only see them as walkbys, and I will try not to elaborate on their stories if it doesn't add anything useful to the episode. Which also means that it will be a lot easier for you to follow along, since there will only be a selection of households that you see in the episodes every time. And since you won't have to try and get to know all of these Sims, but you can just jump on a story train, so to speak, let the stories show you who the main characters in town are, because that is where the episodes are going to focus on. Doing it this way allows me to both share SimsVille with you, which I have loved doing in the last few months, but also still use SimsVille for my own downtime and for resetting my brain, because I need that. When it comes to choosing an aspiration for our Sims, I feel like it is such a personal thing and based on personal preference how we want to choose those, because it greatly impacts the way that we see and get to know our Sims. Choosing aspirations for my Sims has always been completely based on family dynamics, their stories, starting with what happened to them in their childhood, and not so much based on anything in the actual game, like personality, zodiac sign, interests, or anything like that. There are several lists out there that basically choose the aspiration for your sim for you, based on their zodiac sign. Great examples for that are the Maxis system, Pleasant Sims' list, and Marticor's variation on that list. And the times I did use a list like that, I used my own variation of it. The biggest changes are that in my list an Aquarius gets the popularity aspiration and a Leo gets the romance aspiration. Both of these are based on personal experiences and my vision of people around me that actually have these zodiac signs, so they're based on real life personalities. Completely biased, so there's no science behind it or anything. But up until recently, I never really used a standardized list for choosing aspirations. The way I always chose aspirations in SimsVille was that I took into account the family history and the dynamics and the story that I had in mind for that specific sim. So for example, a child from a really poor family could get the fortune aspiration with the backstory that they just wanted to escape their financial struggling family and their past and wanted to feel secure. Or a child growing up in a really large, warm and happy family would try and recreate that in their own adulthood and would want a big family of their own, so they would get the family aspiration. Something in their personality or an event in their childhood might have sparked the story to go a different way. So to get in a large family, for example, if they got into a lot of fights with their siblings, they might have escaped into their books to get away from the rest of the family, and they would grow up to be a knowledge sim. The freedom to create these characters and stories using the family dynamics and their experiences growing up is one of the things that I love most about this game. And another reason is that after so many years of playing and having so many Sims, tying only one aspiration to a zodiac sign would feel to me like I am making clones of my Sims. Like, oh, there goes another shy knowledge sim again. I mean, why not have an outgoing and playful knowledge sim? Thinking of combinations like that, I can almost immediately see a character like right develop before my eyes, and I love building stories that way, combining unlikely friendships, paradoxical character traits and hobbies, and most of the time some entertaining surprises along the way. Which led to some interesting combinations of character traits and aspirations, and I still really like that. I really like the idea, for example, of a popularity sim that is really shy, so they want to make friends but they kind of struggle. Maybe not as fun for them, but I I enjoy playing like the challenging stuff, or a fortune sim that's like always broke and doesn't really have is kind of lazy and doesn't really have the ambition to start working, so they look for easier ways to make money. usually ending them on the criminal path, but you know, there are interesting things about giving aspirations to a sim with like the opposite character traits that are supposed to go with that aspiration. So the plan for SimsVille is simple and we won't need any mods for this. I can however really recommend watching a video that Sophie the Puffin made about choosing aspirations as a really nice inspiration and an interesting view on the matter. There's also a link to their spreadsheet under the video, so you can actually use this system for yourself if you'd want to. So the way that we're going to approach this in SimsVille moving forward is that the first aspiration is chosen when a child becomes a teenager. There are 2 moments in time when they may change their aspiration. The first is at the end of high school, right before they go to college, and the second one is right before their graduation, so at the end of college. Whenever the game asks if I want their aspiration to change at the end of sophomore year, I will say no. For the first aspiration, I will keep doing what I've always done. It will be chosen based on their story and role in the family, or just the general vibe that I'm getting from them. But for the second aspiration, I'm going to use the system where each zodiac sign will correspond to an aspiration. Again, pointing me away from orchestrating every aspect of their lives. So a secondary aspiration may only be chosen after the sim reaches the age of 35, so that's 10 years after graduation, which is exactly 4 rounds. Combined with the mod that I used to make the second aspiration be taken into account when calculating chemistry, I think this might offer a really nice change to the system and will be in for some surprises. Because previously they would have already gotten the first and the second aspiration by the time they would get married. But now, chances are that they are already married at 35 and then they get their secondary aspiration and their chemistry might totally change. So that will be interesting. So we are slowly but surely approaching the end of this video. There are 2 more subjects to talk about, and the first one is the community lots. I try to assign at least 1 community lot to each household. The idea is that for every career available in the game, there is a community lot. So Sims in a law enforcement career will work at the police station, Sims in a medical career will work at either the hospital or the clinic, Sims in the military career will work on the army grounds, and Sims in a science career will work in a research facility. Restaurants and diners will provide places where the Sims in a culinary career work, and you can imagine there's something to be designed for every career possible in the game, including the custom ones. This way, we actually get a chance to see every sim during their work hours, instead of them just driving off the lot and coming home a few hours later and having to use our imagination. Not every career will have its own lot. Some careers will have their job on a community lot from another career, like the paranormal career. There are some interesting jobs in the paranormal career that could work great in the science center, at the town hall, or even combine them with the police station. But for example, I do want to build a law firm that Sims in the law career can work at. Generally, the lot will be owned by the highest ranking sim in that career. In many cases, that will be someone who is already retired. It might feel like a bit of a contradiction at first to have a retired sim own a community lot where people work, but I find that it actually works out in a lot of cases. Plus, it gives some extra purpose to an elder's life that they otherwise wouldn't have, and I kinda like that. It's also nice to have this workaround for Sims with an actual job that otherwise would not be able to leave for their community lot on work days because I used the community time project. In a few cases, I was able to work around that by not playing the community lot on all of the weekdays and using the off days in the Sims' actual job to make sure that they can do both. In any case, there's a schedule for each of the community lots, so I know in advance which days the owner has to stay home and which days he or she is going to the community lot. So this also means that for most of the level 10 careers, there can only be 1. In the past, I had like 10 mayors walking around because all of these Sims reach the highest level in their careers, and when you don't think of it like an integrated neighborhood, that doesn't really matter. But when you start to look at it like an integrated neighborhood, it doesn't make any sense, and only one of these Sims can be the actual mayor of the town. The others probably work at the town hall too, but they cannot be in level 10. The town is still very much a work in progress, so we don't have every lot that I want to build yet. I really don't mind though, I kinda like it being a work in progress and adding something to it every week. Besides, there will probably never be an end to the new ideas for buildings, so I'm not counting on ever considering this neighborhood finished. It will probably just keep growing and developing over time, and that's fine. But so far we have the police station and a gathering place for the criminals and a research center that is still under construction. Heavily inspired by Fallout 4, so I cannot wait to finish that because I think it will be really fun playing this community lot. Also, I just have to throw this in here. When I was gathering footage and filming community lots for the purpose of this video, I stumbled upon this factory. The car dealer I showed before is also from that same period. I have built both of these when Open for Business just came out, and since that expansion pack meant combining my first love in gaming, tycoon games, with The Sims, I went nuts. I played these businesses for hours and hours. Now, by today's standards, this building is really ugly, but I remember having so much fun playing it, putting the employees at work here, having them set the microwave on fire in the break room. I was actually surprised at the level of detail that was already in here in 2006. We have a staff room with an espresso machine, ways to make lunch, a manager's office with a computer. All we really need now to make this functional in today's playstyle are a Monique's hacked computer, a sim blender, a visitor controller, and we've got ourselves a working factory. Which brings us to the specifics of today's way of playing the community lots. So whenever a sim that owns the community lot is going to play a working day at that career lot, we start at their home lot, they get in their car and they go to the community lot. From there, we check the schedule to see which workers are supposed to come in that day and what their activities are going to be. So we use the sim blender to summon the workers to the appropriate lot, the visitor controller to make sure that nobody else visits, and the time control clock that I mentioned in this video when we talked about slowing down time. I also use the visitor controller to ban certain types of sims from certain lots, based on either their hobby, their aspiration, their age, and the visitor controller gives lots of other options too. Banning certain types of sims from sim-owned shops or bars and stuff enables you to make, for example, singles bars for romance sims, or a library where only knowledge sims show up. I think there's also a setting where you can actually ban sims that are already in a relationship. So a singles bar would be a really cool option to build if you want to get your singles to meet each other. So moving back to actual workplaces. When the workers come in, they are sent to their desks where they do some work behind their computer. There is a schedule for every one of these career lots, so we have something to stick to gameplay wise, and this also makes sure that the income for the lot is sort of balanced. They do earn money for the owner working behind their computers, and so does the owner if he works behind a computer. They also earn skills. Earning skills on the job is one of the main reasons why I could never go back to playing without these lots anymore. The more time they spend in the office, the more skills they build, gradually earning them more skills as they get older and more experienced. And this brings a realism to the game that I really like. The money that they earn goes to the owner of the lot, and just so that no unrealistic amounts of money flow into the town, I let the owner of the lot donate a certain amount of money per worker for every day that the career lot is played. Which brings us to the last subject of this video, the town's finances. To be honest, I wouldn't even have this channel if I hadn't watched Pleasant Sims Edgewood series and her video on her financial and tax system, so I feel like I should really mention that here. Watching her videos, and especially Edgewood, gave such an inspirational boost that I completely changed the entire way of how I looked at the game and how I played the game. Even though it had some similarities to the way I already played it, it really added new ideas of how I could reorganize my town's finances and incorporate a tax system, healthcare system, school fees, etc. After that, I watched a lot of other videos on a lot of other great ideas about The Sims, and that has also made a big change in how I play the game today and how much fun I'm still having with this game. As you probably are too, still playing it in 2023 since you're watching a video about it. So yeah, comment below if you're still playing The Sims 2 in 2023. So I found a way to get this neighborhood that I had played in for years on the new system, and it actually took me a few weeks to get all of the excess money to the town's finances and reworking which community lots could have been paid for with the town's money, and then donating that extra money, making the town budget more realistic. I already have a video up on the channel about how I organized the town's finances in Cherry Blossom Springs, so we are not going into the same detail as I did there, but if you haven't watched it, feel free to go and check that one out. Now, the system I'm using in SimsVille is sort of similar, except that there are several spreadsheets, and I feel that there is such a low percentage of people who actually find that fun that we won't go into that here. But if you have a question about it, please let me know and I'll be happy to answer it. It is something I really enjoy doing, just curling up on the couch with my laptop and a cup of coffee and just planning away in my Excel sheets. It makes it all the more enjoyable when you finally see things come to life in the actual game. So yeah, I really enjoy it, but I won't bore you with it. So my Sims will pay taxes, school fees, health insurance per week, and a life insurance fee that they will pay once in their lifetime when they turn to elders. They have paid this in the first rotation, where I have set all of the households to the correct time frame and transferred all unreasonable amounts of money to the town's budget, but we won't start the next tax payments until the second Monday, so we're not going to do that in the first few rounds, because I want to take the first few rounds to just get everything set up, focus on adding the career lots, the hobby lots, and everything that is still on the list to add to the neighborhood. What I can say about the town hall budget is that every community lot that has been or will be added to the neighborhood has been paid for by the money that the Sims have earned over the years when playing this neighborhood. So no bonuses, no free lots, no gifts. Everything has been earned and has been paid for. So we now have a pretty realistic budget for the town to work with moving forward, and all of the households have only a few hundred or a few thousand simoleons to start with, if there was no good reason why they should have like a higher amount of savings in the first place. Oh, and I'm obviously using the No 20k handout. This one makes so much sense that I almost forget that it's a mod. Moving forward, I will keep adding community lots to the neighborhood using the town's current budget, and from the second Monday on, new tax money is going to flow into the town hall to further expand the town. And I'm going to keep you updated on all the progress. Households will also keep earning money, and some households will use this money to start a small shop on the main street, which is going to be sort of like the center of town where all the shops are located. So I think that's the shortest version of explaining how I look at it, but again, if you would like to know more, feel free to ask me a question and I'll be happy to answer it. So that is it for all of the gameplay rules and systems that I could think of that I use in SimsVille. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave me a like. And we will end the episode with just some short footage of toddlers in The Sims 2, because I will probably never get over just how cute their animations are. As always, thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, click the bell if you want to see more neighborhood updates, community lot progress, and game rule videos. I hope you have a good week, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!